Hi and welcome everyone. My name is Mikael Korsgaard Rasmussen and I'm working as an equity analyst here at ABG covering Danish IT and tech companies. And today I have the pleasure of hosting OrderYOYO, represented by the CEO Jesper Johansen. So Jesper, please go ahead with your presentation.
Yes, thank you, Mikael, and thank you for the invitation. As Mikael said, I'm Jesper. I'm the CEO of OrderYOYO. We'll do a short presentation of OrderYOYO, what we do, how our market position is, and how we perform. I have 20 minutes. I have a tendency to talk more, so bear with me. I'll try to do it within my 20 minutes. Next slide, please. And next slide. So this is basically what we do. We liberate restaurants. We liberate takeaway restaurants by providing them with a software solution so that the independent local takeaway has the power to claim back their own customers. Important here is that normally you would see a picture of a lot of logos. We are not about logos. We are about people. We are about the small local independent quick service restaurant, so the mom and pop business around the corner, where you buy your local kebab, pizza, or those kind of things. So small businesses that we empower here and liberate. And why is that important? Next slide, please. So a takeaway restaurant and the customers and the revenue of a takeaway restaurant is a little different than what you see in an in-dine restaurant, and especially if you go outside the more urban areas of the large cities. Up to 90% of all orders in a takeaway restaurant are recurring orders from loyal customers, basically ordering from the same local restaurant and actually also ordering the same stuff every time. So the way these orders are handled digitally right now is that a big part of that is handled through portals, which of course then owns the end user, and where the restaurant is charged by everywhere from 14 to 35%. Now, obviously, the restaurant, as in every other e-commerce operation, should have their own system and engage with these customers themselves. We provide that. We do that at scale all over Europe, cost efficiently, so the restaurant will at least save half, if not more, compared to portals. And more importantly, they will have the access to their own customers in relation to repeat buys. This is actually for the small local independent restaurant the difference between life and death. I mean, this is not for the McDonald's of the world. They will survive. But for the small local pizzeria around the corner, the difference of 10 to 15% of a revenue, having that for themselves, is a gigantic thing, and is basically what is saving them from going bust, which is a big problem in this industry. So this is what we do, what we've done from day one, 8 years old. We liberate restaurants. So next slide. So our market position. Now, fairly early on, we took the decision to go very deep in Europe and go very deep in the specific markets. And we've done that over the last 8 years and are today the European market leader, serving more than 10,000 restaurants across Europe. Next slide, please. 256 million in ARR, generating 21 million in EBITDA. Number one positions in the two biggest takeaway markets in Europe, UK and Germany, and number one in Ireland, Northern Ireland, Denmark and Austria, and small positions in Switzerland and Poland. Now, this is important because there's a lot of scalability and a lot of economies of scale in this business that we, of course, need to, both for our shareholders, but also actually for our customers to benefit from. Being the biggest player here means that the products and the capabilities that we can provide to our restaurant partners are so much more than the small independent ones and the local players that we look at in the different countries around Europe. So size and profit matters, and it is basically what drives our market share, and it is what drives our profit and profitability. So next slide. Because the conditions for this industry is quite tough, actually. In all the markets that we're in, both the restaurant partners, the takeaway restaurants, are having a tough time, and so do end users, as we all know, inflation and increased food prices and stuff like that. So in order to help restaurants to grow, we need to be super efficient, and we need to be the best in the market. And the best way to show this is that even though that we have these tough conditions, we're actually growing our gross merchandise value, i.e. the value that goes through our systems by the restaurants, by 31% from Q3 22 to Q3 23. And that's a proof that we are taking market share both from portals and from other white label providers. So next slide. We want to keep on being number one in Europe. We want to build Fortress Europe and defend that position. We want to do that organically, and we want to do it inorganically. So just a little bit on the inorganic journey that we're on. We have the opportunity to be the consolidator in this market as a listed company, and we are looking for two different type of transactions. New markets where we enter a new market that we're not in already. We do that by acquiring number one, maybe number two, but at least one of the two biggest one in a given country, to have the right position from day one. And then we do it in existing markets where we acquire local participants to drive economies of scale and profitability. So an example of the first one was our acquisition of AppSmart almost 1.5 years ago, summer 22. And an example of the second one would be the King Food acquisition we did in April of 23. Next slide, please. Both the inorganic and the organic growth is what is important for us, and historically we've been growing quite nicely. Obviously, from 2019 to 2020, we saw a big uplift from the COVID situation. We actually managed to stay ahead of the curve also after COVID ended, and have been growing the business since, and are now at a 256 million for Q3, and is guiding for an average, an ARR of between 260 to 270 million for 23, and another growth from 23 to 24 for guidance. Next slide. We are an ARR business. Now, our ARR is basically based on of two things. We have a fixed subscription amount, which is around 40% of our total ARR, and then we have a usage-based subscription, which is about 60%, which is basically commission that we are charging, and where we are growing with our restaurant partners. This is for us a good balance because we have the security of a fixed amount, but we also have both the incentive and the benefit from growing with our restaurant partners that we do over time. From a geographical point of view, quite a nice composition there as well, with Germany being the biggest market, then Great Britain, Ireland, and Denmark. So we are quite happy about our ARR composition. Next slide, please. Very briefly on Q3 performance, we announced that last month, so old numbers in a sense, so September numbers, but I think it's important to show them. So if you just take the next slide, 38% growth from 22 to 23. This is like-for-like growth, so where we have consolidated AppSmart also in the 22 figures. 38% growth in this market is strong, and we're proud of that. Portals are growing at between 0 and 10%, and the market trends that we see among a lot of our competitors is around the same, 0 to 10%. So we are growing the market here, which we are happy about. Next slide. And more importantly, we're doing it at a profit. So quite an increase in EBITDA from year to date 22 to year to date 23. So last year, after the first 9 months, we had a loss of 4 million, and now we had a plus of almost 17. So quite a big leap, indicating two things. First of all, is economy of scale, that as we grow and as we acquire companies, we do have a lot of savings potential, number one. And number two, we are focused on being cost conscious, and it is increasingly important for us to show profitability. Next slide, please. And that we've done over the last quarters. So here, the last 8 quarters, so 2022 to 23, quite a big increase quarter over quarter, driven by local market leadership, economies of scales, and our M&A strategy. So strong profits that we intend to increase and continue showing. Next slide. Now, this one is obviously important, as all other or most other European software companies. We capitalize on R&D spendings, which means that the EBITDA is before R&D expenditures, which are capitalized. So cash EBITDA, which basically is the EBITDA minus the R&D expenditures that are capitalized, has turned positive for the first time in June 2023 and throughout all months in Q3 2023. Super important for us. This means that we now are cash positive, and that we basically is independent of external funding. That is very important in this market, but also very strong for us as an organization to be cash positive. Next slide, please. That brings me to guidance and outlook. So for 23 and 24, so if you take the next slide, we have the 23 guidance that we have raised 4 times over the last year. So now we are guiding at an ARR of between 260 and 270, compared to our original guidance of between 215 and 230. Net revenue is expected to be between 230 and 240 million Danish kroner, compared to our original guidance of 190 to 205. And GMV, so the gross merchandise value, is expected to be between 2.5 and 2.7 billion, compared to original guidance of 2.2 to 2.4 billion. And EBITDA significantly up during the year. So now we are guiding for an EBITDA between 20 and 23 million for the full year of 23. Compared to original guidance of 5 to 15. So the span has actually also narrowed quite a bit there. 4 times guidance increase. Next slide, please. And we just gave the 24 full year outlook as we presented our Q3 numbers. So ARR is expected to grow around 15% to between 300 and 310 million. Net revenue will grow to 260 to 270 million. GMV to 2.8 to 3 billion, and EBITDA will be between 23 and 28 million. All this is based on pure organic growth, and that we don't see any uplift in the market, so still challenge the markets for our RPs. And profits increase because we keep on and expanding our cost focus. Next slide. I guess that was it. I tried to do it within the 20 minutes. So Mikkel, I hope I did okay. So I'm ready for questions.
You did it in 13 minutes, so
Okay.
so we have plenty of time for questions. So I'd like to start where you ended your presentation off with the guidance that you've raised 4 times so far during the year, 2 of which I understand are obviously from acquisitions. But could you talk a bit about the visibility you have and also relate that to your full year 24 targets? Are they mostly guidance, or would they be more like ambitious targets?
Say the last thing again. Didn't hear that.
The 24 targets, should we consider them mostly as guidance or more like targets, ambitious targets?
Well, it's guidance, and then you tell me if it's ambitious or not. What you can say here is that no, obviously we are in an environment. So the story for us is that we got listed in 21, just after COVID on the First North, and in November 21, just before I stepped in as CEO. We had to come out with a downward revision of our guidance, a small one, but nevertheless, we had to adjust our guidance down with a severe impact on the price in the shares, and with a relatively big job for us to gain back investors' trust. That means that the way that we are guiding is, it's not like we are overly conservative, but because obviously we need to give the market something that makes sense, but we are cautious. And so going back to the word ambitious. Of course, we're ambitious. We want to grow the business, but we don't wanna come out with a super ambitious target that we can see we don't have any chance to reach. So I think that we have this conservative approach to guiding, and that also goes for 24. Obviously, we do think that we will grow, and we do think that we'll grow our margin. We do think that we will keep on winning market shares, but the uncertainty in the market, combined with our history and the fact that we need to make sure that we have the trust of our investors, means that we when we guide, is probably more on the conservative side than on the ambitious side. That I could have been a politician. I'm sorry if this turned out wrong, but obviously, yeah, does it make sense?
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Then moving to try to understand the scalability of your business model.
Yeah.
So could you try to elaborate a bit on the sales cycles, the onboarding of your customers, and what are the different stages? How long do they take, etc.?
Yeah, no, good question, and obviously, no. I mean, let me start somewhere else, because there's a lot of scalability in this business, but a lot of that actually goes in terms of R&D, which basically we have one platform approach. It goes, of course, with finance and all these kind of things, HR, but it also goes in terms of sales. Even though this is a very feet on the ground business, so we do have salespeople out in cars chasing restaurants. But the processes that we do are aligned and are optimized in a way that only we can do as a big company, number one. Number two, because we are as big as we are in the biggest countries in Europe, in UK and Germany, we do have the ability to reach a lot of clients, probably easier than smaller competitors would. Now, the interesting thing in our industry is it's actually not that difficult to sell the system. The difficult thing here is actually to get the restaurants onboarded and make sure that they perform. And that also means that our purpose is to liberate restaurants, but there's only a certain amount of restaurants that fit into our space. So the qualification of leads is very central for us. So we do not hunt all restaurants. We hunt the restaurants where we can see that there's the biggest opportunity that they will succeed in our system and with our system, to the benefit of them and obviously to the benefit of us. And that means that our salespeople, and I think this is contrary to at least all the small local players in the market, our salespeople basically have a list of restaurants they need to attend to. So they have a predefined sales list. So it's not like, as you see in a lot of other players in this market, that salespeople basically just go knocking doors and then you take everybody in Corey Street. We actually have qualified the ones that we wanted them to go to. And this is where it all starts, because then actually the process of onboarding, getting a restaurant flying and getting them to grow becomes the probability of success will be much, much higher. Now, the actual onboarding so the production of the solution for the restaurants is quite simple. It doesn't take a long time. But the onboarding process is divided in two steps: a 60-day period, which is very intense, focusing on getting the restaurant up and flying, and a 60 to 120 days period where we handheld them quite a bit. And then after that, we have a customer success team that takes care of the journey after that. The magic moment is happening in the first 60 days. So basically what we can see is if we do that right, basically the restaurants get going from day one, and then they basically just grow from there. Remember, we are not out to say to restaurants, take out the printers of the portals. We're not an or strategy, we're an and strategy. So you can still have the portals and all that, but just make sure, Mr. Restaurant Owner, that when there's a customer coming in that's a repeat customer, make sure that he's using your own system instead of the portals. So it's much more of an evolution process than a revolution process. That means that we need to be going from the outset, and then we grow from there.
Perfect. And then I think another interesting point is obviously competition. You also mentioned it a bit in the start, but I mean, in the beginning, what would you say is your main competition, and what makes you win against these in the long term?
Yeah. So I think we should divide this in two. So there is on the restaurant side, there's a lot of other players like us doing online ordering, white label online ordering. Fairly small, all of them. These are the players that we actually consolidate in the moment. We do not see any big player in the online ordering space as big as us. There is one other company called Flipdish, an Irish company, founded in Dublin, more or less the same time as us, have received a lot of money in venture funding, have a completely different strategy than us. So they're in 32 countries, serving all restaurants with basically all products. And right now, at least we can see that our strategy with being focused on specific geographies and specific restaurants is more valuable in the sense that that the growth that we are seeing and the earnings we're seeing from us is quite different than what they experience. So that space is kind of narrow, and we don't see, it's the day-to-day. There are no big ones there, and it's basically we are battling against the white labels, the smaller ones. We have the value of a big organization, so what we bring to the table is just a better product, better service, and better legal and payment methods as well. So there's a big KYC, so know your customer and GDPR issue in this industry that not many dare to talk about. But we do, because we have actually KYC'd all our restaurants. So we know that what we do is 100% compliant to the rules. And this is a situation where especially some of the smaller white labels do have a problem. Then you have in that space as well, you have some of the POSs of the world, payments, point of sales companies like American Toast, Lightspeed, and the likes. It's important here to remember that we are about generating orders, whereas the POS of the world are about executing orders. We also have a POS system tailor-made for takeaway restaurants, and we sell that and upsell that to our restaurants. But there's a big difference here. Now, and there's a lot of additional work that needs to go into generating the order compared to executing the order. The POS systems of the world would actually like to go into our world, and they do have solutions for this. We really haven't seen a lot from that, to be honest. So from that point of the market, the position is strong. Then if you turn to the end user part of the equation, the ones that we are battling against for the end users are obviously all the portals. So basically, Just Eats, the Wolts, the Uber Eats, the Deliveroos, the Delivery Heroes of the world, which basically is an end user product that helps the end user to buy from some of their restaurants. Now we're coming from the other way and say, no, actually, we want to help the restaurants to attract the end users to buy their food from themselves. Obviously, they are different beasts. And here there's a couple of things. First of all, they're big marketing machines. They do not market the specific restaurant. They market the portal, even though that a lot of people is actually using the same restaurant over and over again. It's all about delivery. So they do have their own delivery. All our restaurants have their own delivery. That's kind of a precondition for our restaurants, that they have to have their own delivery. Which basically means that they don't need that part of the equation from portals. So you could say from another point of view, from the end user point of view, and from the restaurant point of view, if somebody is searching for a specific restaurant, it's kind of weird if they end up buying the food from that restaurant through a portal. That should of course be by the restaurants themselves. So that's more of a end user focus, that we need to make sure that when we market and help the restaurants to brand themselves, that they are the right places. They are the right places, especially on Google, Facebook, and all these kind of things.
Yeah, perfect. I think that's all we had time for today.
Okay.
So I'd like to thank you for your participation, and then to all of you, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.